Hello class, my name is Omar Padilla, and throughout my presentation I'm going to talk about all the positives and negatives I got out when working with my client. Some of the things that I did notice that he did very well on, and other things that we can possibly work on, even as myself I could work on with him. As the program progresses, what we got out of it, and then what he got out of it, what maybe I can work on so he can approach more of his fitness goals and what he plans to achieve. So here we go. So starting out with the health and movement assessment, throughout the functional movement, some of the tools that I used these were some of the tools that I used to assess my client. So we got through the seven testing, and that being the deep squat, the hurdle jump, the inline lunge, stability, shoulder mobility, shoulder clearing, ASLR, the trunk stability, the spinal extension clearing, rotary stability, and the spinal flexion clearing. So throughout, I kind of just went one by one with him. We really took the time to go through each one. I really noticed on his left side and his right side a lot. So starting with the deep squat, we kind of before giving him an actual score, I had him do it multiple times because it was kind of hard to notice what he was doing wrong and what he was doing right. So some of the things that I did notice where his knees tended to cave in a little bit, but they also went past his feet. So something that he needed to work on was just kind of pushing more of his hips back and kind of just basically sitting on a chair. So being that said, that his body also kind of leaned a little bit forward as he held up the stick. And something we just worked on was, as I put the piece of wood on the ground, he and his heels laid on it, he tended to sit back more correctly. His hips were more aligned. His knees weren't going past his toes, and he had more of that upright torso position rather than him leaning forward, him not being able to sit back right, and his knees caving, but also going past his toes. So that's something that we really needed to work on for him. On that deep squat was just him focusing on pushing his hips back. Another thing was in his inline lunge, that was perfect stability. He was able to keep himself really upright, not leaning from side to side, really focusing on just being upright the whole time. And that being said, on both left and his right side, him being very athletic, he was able just to maintain and really engage his core and just being on a single lane almost. His shoulder mobility, he kind of lacked a little bit more on his left side than he did on his right side. So he was able to reach further more on his right than he did on his left. That being said, that's something just we can work more on his left side than his right. So throughout his program, I did create that where he would be able to work more on his left shoulder and then his right, more kind of just stretching mobilities rather than just lifting or any type of accessory lifting. And as the next one, the shoulder clearing, he perfectly did fine with that. He had no pain whatsoever on both sides, and he has very good flexibility. Like I said, he was a former athlete, so him being athletic, still kind of having that athletic side. He has very good flexibility both on his left and right as he stretched back all the way with his leg. Again, mentioning, I did ask him if he had any pain in his hamstring or any pulling of whatsoever, because he did have a minor IT band injury in the past, so I had to really be precautious about his hamstring, that being just a major group muscle of his leg. So his trunk stability, he really did he did fine on that as well. There were times where he did kind of lean forward a little bit, but trunk stability was perfectly fine. Again, spinal extension clearing, again, no pain. I had asked him. The next one rotary stability. He did kind of lean from side to side as he did the first set, but then I had him do it where he did opposite arm, opposite leg, and he was a lot better. He was more in line. His hips were a lot more in line. His back was more straight instead of him kind of just jotting off from side to side. And the final one was being a spinal flexion clearing. Again, no pain whatsoever. Perfectly fine on that. As I went through his part Q, he was perfectly fine. Like I said, the only thing that I did that he did bring up was the fact that he did have a minor IT band injury, so he's been very precautious about that when he goes on runs and especially when he lifts. So he tries to keep that very minimal, as when he's running, he likes to keep it about maybe 2-3 days out of the week, very short, maybe like 2-3 miles, nothing more, just because he's trying to avoid bringing that injury back. So that's just something I noticed with him. Again, he's had no problems whatsoever in his health, but like I said, besides the IT bad injury that's been kind of bugging him for a while, but his health is fine. He's very athletic, just maintaining his fitness throughout. So the next one would be his periodization. So kind of just going through this program a little bit, explaining. So the way I set it up is he kind of looked to gain a little bit of muscle mass, kind of lean muscle, but also build speed and maintain his endurance because he was a former cross-country and track athlete. So that being said, some of his goals were to just kind of just maintain lean muscle mass, but also gain a little bit. He doesn't want to gain too much, but just kind of to the point where he just looks a little more built. So that being said, as going through this program, so the way I structured it was throughout week 1, throughout week 2, for the first month, I kind of just leave it all the same going through week 1 all the way through week 4. That being said is I don't change anything whatsoever until the following month. Reason being that is because I want his body to really focus on that first month of getting used to the exercises. So if he's not used to these exercises, and he's not very comfortable, then by the end of the month, say about week 3, about half away week 3, maybe week 4, his body would already be accustomed to him being used to those exercises. And then when coming to the next cycle, his body is going to have to readjust because I set him a new set of exercises. And again, the second, that following month, he's going to readjust and then so on and so forth. So the way I planned it is most of his exercises, a lot of his compound movements are going to be more 4 sets. And then a lot of his smaller accessory movements are going to be just 3 sets. So keeping those 3 sets kind of, about reps kind of relatively high, but then his more bigger compound lifts would be he'd focus a lot more or less on reps, so really amping up the intensity on there. So as he goes rep by rep and set by set, by the time he hits his last rep on his last set of if it's front squat or if it was a bench press, he should be able to struggle on his last set. That being said, he always has a spotter and just really pushing himself. So he's always adding more weight as he progresses through each set. So normally the duration of these workouts should take about an hour and a half, just depending how quickly he goes through it, and if he's really unfamiliar with how the plan goes, then he really should take his time. Then again, a lot of these movements, I focus more on the compound lift than the accessory. So a lot of the extra stuff, so going kind of through day 1 here and he has front squat, SLDL, step ups, calf raises, and stability ball hamstrings plus sled pushes. So sled pushes being his cardio or his conditioning and just kind of really going at it. So so the sled push would just determine how much weight he wants to add on the sled. And then same goes with any other exercise following that. And then day 2, kind of the same thing follows. So bench press, push press, one arm dumbbell row, alternating DB, incline bench, and then eccentric chin-ups, and then interval tempo running. So a lot of these are going to determine how he feels during the day and how he's felt the day before. So like I said, I kind of just keep it all relatively the same throughout the first month. I change it the following month, and then so on and so forth. So I like to keep, then again, I also like to keep his days very short, or his weeks very short. So I'll have him work out like 4 days out of the week, unless he wants to work a 5th day, then I can add another day. But I like to keep it about 4 to 5 days out of the week. So the one thing that we went over was on his lower body, his front squat, he has the issue having his elbows up high. So something we kind of just went over was just having his elbows up high, driving out his knees, and then keeping his upright torso, which he also struggled a little bit as he squatted down. He had the tendency to drop his elbows down, and then his torso would kind of lean forward along with his hips. So instead of pushing his hips back, he was leaning forward more so. His elbows were sagging, and so that's kind of something we went over, was just focusing on driving up the elbows, keeping his torso upright, and pushing the hips back. Another thing we went over on his upper body was the barbell bent over row. So we discussed that he tends to keep the bar away from him, so he should always keep the bar as close as possible to him when bringing up the bar towards him. So really focusing on that. He does tend to shrug a little bit, so I tell him to relax his shoulders, and all he has to do is just row the bar to him, keep his elbows tucked in to his body, and just keeping that bar close, maintaining stability and engaging core the whole time. So some things that I just kind of being able to apply this into faith. So some things that we could see is just every athlete exercises discipline in every way. So that being said, is if you apply discipline, whether it's yourself or the client, that can really push them to reach their goals. So that being said, they can write in the journal, making sure they keep themselves accountable, whether it's food or just their workout plan, making sure they're keeping it day by day, really progressing each time, and just really focusing on it. That's probably the biggest thing I can give out there, is just really focusing on yourself and then being the best you can do when working out. Some applications that I feel like I could myself improve on is just technique, just really focusing on technique a lot. I tend to focus on that myself as well. Really coaching, really giving the correct cues when coaching somebody else, and making sure I'm explaining it clearly, and just being able to demonstrate it clearly. And then just, continue to what I've learned. Continue to supervise, continue to plan these accordingly, and just train, and then continue to learn all these new equipment, and just continue to have patience. So it's something I really am continuing to work on. And that is all for this. Thank you so much.